Welcome to Impact with Kenny Anderson. I'm Kenny Anderson. Not. I'm not Kenny Anderson. There's Kenny Anderson right there. I know a lot of people were horrified, like, oh, he looks so ugly and old now. What happened? Yeah, no, it's David Person. It's me. But I am here, and Kenny is there, because today we're going to talk about the 25th anniversary of Kenny's media work, specifically his radio show.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Second Chance Radio Show. This is going to be in November. It'll be November the 1st, the first Sunday in November, and we'll give you more details about that. But that's why I'm here. So today, a special Impact with Kenny Anderson, where Kenny Anderson is on the other side of the studio to be interviewed by me.
Yes.
The last time I was here with the CEO of Phoenix, Brian Dodson. He and I were talking about Phoenix and issues related to people with disabilities. It is good to be back here.
It's great to have you back, and I couldn't think of a better person to have in that chair right now doing what we've talked about. Number one, I like, the more I think about our relationship, the more I like to, as I talk about it, start out with this first, that we're good friends.
Yes.
And the fact that, I could say lots of things about the relationship over the years and various projects that we've worked on, which have been successful or otherwise in some situations.
Yeah.
But with varying degrees of success over the years, but just some high points, some mid points, and maybe even some low points. But the reality is that we've been good friends all along the way. And the fact that 25 years ago, you and I started out with this radio show.
That's right.
While you were the general manager of WJOU. Makes you the most fitting person to be there right now.
Well, you know what? I appreciate that. So let's go ahead, since you set it up nicely, let's go ahead and give people the backstory. Let's explain, and I'll let you do it, because this is, even though I'm sitting in your chair, this is still your show. So why don't you explain how the Second Chance radio broadcast, which, by the way, folks, is on 90.1 FM, WJOU, every Sunday from 2 o'clock until 3, sometimes 4, depending upon what's being discussed and how hot the topic is and that sort of thing. Why don't you set it up? Well, go ahead and tell people how this radio show got started.
In 1990, I was a counselor working at the Charter Retreat Hospital in Decatur. I was actually the counseling center director in Huntsville. And of course, you and I were friends, always talking about lots of different things. You, of course, were in radio and television communications. And also just somebody I knew from being at Oakwood. We were just Oakwood mates in that sense, both graduates from Oakwood. You were starting your career. I was a little bit ahead of that, but also getting started in my career for the most part as well. And we got to talking, don't remember the specific circumstances one day, but the idea of a possible show came up sometime in 1990 as a result of my relationship with Charter. And I remember our first pitch being that we wanted to have Charter underwrite the show for a year. But our concept was to have a show that focused on people in a real pragmatic way, talking about the real issues behind the facade that people oftentimes see in people's lives, the mask that we wear, at the same time that we carry the weight and the burden of life through adversity and chaos and challenges. I remember specifically talking about that in the context of our faith experience, saying that, we're church guys, grew up in the church, always been around the church, went to church schools, but yet so many of our friends, including ourselves, had faced challenges, some more so than others. And the reality is that even though we had a great faith foundation, we still had obstacles and we still had barriers, and some people were able to overcome those things and some were not. And so we wanted to produce a show that focused on not only the issue, but what happens beyond the issue, and also project hope beyond the issue. And that's what Second Chance was really all about. And that's kind of how I remember it happening.
That's a great synopsis. I think from my vantage point, what happened was almost exactly the way you've described it. The only thing I'll add is that, as I recall, it was my realization that, one, you had great conversation and communication skills, because that's essential for a talk show.
It is.
You got to have a person who can talk.
Otherwise, it's not going to work.
This is not going to work. So you were and are a great communicator. So that was very helpful. Then also, I think another important point for me was that you were in the helping profession. And you had at that time, and still do obviously, credibility as someone with that mental health background. So you were able to give a perspective that was substantive on some of these issues, you know, that you were just alluding to.
Yes.
You know, and speaking as somebody who's grown up in the church as you did, you know, we know that even though, you know, in church and even if you want to take it outside of church, you know, people go about their daily business and you know, we speak and we chat and we say hello, we do our business together, we go to school together, we go to church together. But we all know that real life is always happening behind the scenes. And sometimes real life is traumatic, sometimes it is catastrophic.
Yes.
And consequently, people are then, in order to function, you know, on a daily basis, we all, to some degree, have a facade that we wear.
That's right.
So the goal of the show, as I thought about it, was to to penetrate that facade in a way that was healthy and, as you said, hopeful.
Yeah, and to expose the truth behind people's backstories. Number one, letting them know that they don't have to suffer in silence, that there is help beyond their pain, that there is some kind of reconciliation beyond the hurt, to help people understand that there's a meaningful way to approach whatever challenges we have in life, and life's challenges don't have to destroy you.
Yes, absolutely. So, as the host of the show, let's tick off a few, let's see if we can explore a few milestones here. Who would you say were your most memorable interviews? Can you think of any?
There's one that is my most memorable interview, and it probably happened somewhere between 1994 and 97 probably. I interviewed a young man named Richard Geis. Richard Geis was a former gang member who had pretty much reformed his life. He had come back to his earlier position in life where he was looking for the right things to do and looking for a way to really break free from the hold that the gang life had on him. He had relocated here from Little Rock, Arkansas, right around the time that a film on HBO was coming out called Gang Banging in Little Rock, which some people would recall. And Richard told us on that interview that he was actually supposed to be featured in that. But somewhere in the production process and the filming, he had actually went to a evangelistic effort, gave his heart to God, and returned to Huntsville because he was trying to get into Oakwood. During that time, he got a job working in a cafeteria. He was beginning to tell his testimony. I heard him speak at Oakwood University's AYS youth program one night, and you could hear pin drop. And you know, those of us that have had that experience oftentimes know that that's not always an easy crowd to be able to connect with. But yet there wasn't a sound in the place as he told his story that night, and it was a very, very meaningful thing. Richard came on our show after that, talked to us about his past, talked to us about his road moving forward, and talked about his hopes for the future. Tragically, and I think we probably aired the show that October, tragically, he was killed that Thanksgiving after returning back home to Little Rock. And it was a very devastating thing. I remember getting a phone call from the gentleman who had mentored him back to Huntsville and said, you know, you're not going to believe this. And unfortunately, Richard's past caught up with him when he went back home.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So it was a gang-related killing.
That's what was suspected, that there was something about his past that led to his killing once he went home. It wasn't that he was caught up in some kind of situation, you know, committing a crime or something. His past caught up with him in some way, and he lost his life tragically. And for a young man to have so much promise was a very powerful thing. Fortunately, we still have that recording and can actually be heard today. And I have played it over for people to hear.
Wow. That's moving.
Yeah.
Very moving, very touching, very sad.
Yes.
And I think there's the moral, if you will, of the story, at least to me, is that it would be better. I mean, it's great when you have a story that resolves itself with a person experiencing, or at least beginning to experience, the the impact of the second chance that the show is about. But it's far better if a person can live life in such a way that perhaps at least in a volatile area of their life such as that, they don't have to even experience a second chance because they just don't, they don't have it. They don't allow their lives to go in that direction. And I think that's the power of that interview and of the show, is to hopefully, with certain topics such as that one, gang banging and so forth, that young people, young men and women can know you actually hopefully can avoid that life.
That's right, that's right, that's right. And see, with Richard's story, as tragic as the ending was, he still leaves a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
He leaves a legacy that people can understand, to study, to research, to connect with, and figure out, you know, is this for me? Is this the outcome I want for my life? Are there choices that I'm making now that could result in this thing happening? And really, that's what the show for me is all about. It's about people having a chance to listen to another person say, this is my experience. This is what it did to me. This is how I confronted it. This is how I overcame it. This is how I'm still struggling through it. I mean, there are lots of ways and lots of levels that people can connect with the information. And that's really, for me, the power of the broadcast.
Awesome. So, you have introduced some new elements into the show.
Yes.
I'm a part of one of those elements, which is really fun. Every first Sunday, you get me and a group of guys together, and we have a panel discussion. You also do the same thing with a group of women on the third Sundays of the month. Explain what that's about.
You know, as the show evolves, and I realize, you know, you've been doing the show for so long, something should be different after a while. The same formula of talk radio and a talk radio format, of course, is very interesting because topics change and you always have something interesting to say. But how you deliver it becomes the challenge, and keeping people interested and getting people connected to that is always a challenge. And so I'm thinking that, hey, you know, maybe, and I started out by inviting you actually to come on to lend your commentary as a USA Today Board of Contributors member, and certainly your stellar work in the past in the media. I felt that that would be a strong...
You're too kind, sir. You're too kind.
But I'm also telling the truth. It would be a strong way to really have a counterpoint to anything that we might talk about on the show, and also a way to shine the light on current events. And then as you and I began to talk, we started thinking about some other people that could lend a voice to that process as well. And we've invited some very solid voices: Preston Foster, Stephen Foster, Dr. Keith Bird, and of course Dr. Darrell Ezell, who is not with us anymore, was through that show for a period of time. Tim Alston comes to visit us from time to time. I mean, we've got some really strong people. And then I said, well, you know, we got the men's voices, we need the female perspective. And so it'd be great to have some women who have some substance, who have great intelligence, a great breadth of knowledge and information, a dedication, passion, and commitment for their community. And so we've invited Sister Jeanette Smith, another stellar person in the media industry, Michelle Johnson. We have Dr. Crescent Kelly Ellis, who is an outstanding educator, Jamila Randall, also Reverend Cherie Claiborne. Just a fantastic panel of women who every third Sunday of the month really bring it. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the second Sunday of the month, where we have United Way Sunday, where for the past few years we've been highlighting United Way agency notes and activities through a variety of messages, either something directly from the agency or one of their 29 partners.
Awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, so let me close with this final question. You have been volunteering your time doing this radio show as someone who didn't even have a radio background for 25 years. 25 years of Sunday afternoon, prime football time, you know, for you're a big NFL guy like I am, prime basketball time, baseball time, you know, for sports enthusiasts such as ourselves, travel time. But you have, and if you're not there, you make sure that a show is produced and there. What's behind that passion for this show, that you have volunteered your time for 25 years?
You know, this is interesting. I don't think I've ever told you this, but this is such a great and powerful moment. A while back, it's been many years now, but you and I were having a conversation, And I said to you one Sunday or one Monday that I didn't have a show yesterday. And what happened was somehow in between one week and the next, we didn't tape or we didn't get a chance to actually make the connection to make sure that something aired. And I said, I think they just played music. And you and I had a conversation, and part of that conversation was you should never let a week go by without having a show on. And that stuck with me like something that needed to stick with me. And that fueled my passion even more to plan more, to be more strategic in terms of how I engage people in conversation. Even what I'm doing now with these panels and themes and stuff, all emerged over the years from that one conversation that made me recognize the importance, because you talked about the brand, you talked about people's expectation. You know, at that 2 o'clock slot, people are looking for second chance, whether you know that or not. They're looking for it. And you need to deliver for people what they're looking for. And because I know that show, and we've gotten all kinds of powerful things happen, testimonies from people that say they listened to the show. In between break one time, I got a call from a woman from France who said, I'm listening to the show right now. I was interviewing a young lady in Baltimore who had written a book. She said, that woman's story is my story. It's late right now, but I cannot go to sleep because it's so powerful. We get emails and letters and other kinds of things from people that listen to the show. And recognizing that this show really makes a difference, even but for one person, is what drives me to do this from one week to the next.
Awesome. Well, I've got to give credit where credit is due. That was not an original piece of advice. I actually was given that advice by Dwayne Wickham, former USA Today columnist who recently retired actually from USA Today and has been serving as the dean of the Morgan State University Communications School for a couple of years now. But Dwayne is the one who said to me, you should never let a week go by without your column, you know, being in the newspaper. Never take a week off. Don't go, even if you, essentially he was like, even if you're going on vacation, you make sure there's a column with your name and face on it in the newspaper. So that's where I got that from. And I just passed it along to you.
Well, I thank Dwayne for passing it on to you, and I thank you for passing it on to me. It did make a difference.
Well, you know, what's really made a difference is your commitment, your skill set, your passion for that radio show, Second Chance. And I'm just glad that 25 years ago, when you and I were much younger, and when I was, 100 pounds lighter, we came up with this concept, and you were quick to embrace it. And I'm really, really proud of the fact that you continued it, because one of my concerns, and I don't know if I told you this, but one of my concerns was I wondered if you were going to continue and how it was going to go and if that transition was going to work, because I was very intimately involved. I didn't know if my predecessor would be or not. But you know, you have grown this thing into something that is solid and that makes a very real contribution to the community, so much so that I probably get more people who come up to me telling me how much they enjoy me on your show than I get people telling me that they enjoy me on my show. So your show is helping to keep my radio career alive. So I appreciate that.
Hey, it's all in the friendship, man. All in the friendship.
Kenny Anderson, the host of Impact Here and for the city of Huntsville. Of course, he is the director of multicultural affairs, and he is the host of Second Chance on 90.1 FM WJOU, and is celebrating 25 years of Second Chance this November the 1st. And what time does that broadcast
It starts at 2 o'clock, and the public is invited to come out and be a part of that. It's at the Redstone Federal Union Training Facility, 200 Wind Drive. We're going to have a live broadcast from 2 to 3, and then a public celebration from 3 to 4. We'd love for the public to come out and be a part of that. We've got some very special things planned that day.
Awesome. And I, of course, will be there, and hopefully many of you watching will be there too. For Kenny Anderson, who is the actual host of this show, Impact, you know, I no matter what I try to do, I tried to slip him a 50, it doesn't matter. He just told me, get out of here, it's time for you to leave. So have a great day, and Kenny will be back in this chair in front of this camera the next time you tune into Impact with Kenny Anderson.